Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast. We just talked a little bit about Florida quarterback DJ Lagway. We're going to stay in Florida, talk a little bit about Florida State, Clemson, and their legal dispute with the ACC. So this has been a big deal for a few years now. ACC and Florida State and Clemson are kind of locked in a debate over basically if Florida State and Clemson can leave the conference at any time. So I just want to go over quickly a timeline of kind of how this has all played out and how we've gotten to this point. So even starting in 2021 all the way up to 2023, you kind of started to hear Florida State and Clemson were expressing frustration with the ACC's media rights deal, especially compared to the Big Ten, the SEC payouts that each school gets in those conferences from those media deals. And there were concerns over the financial gap between the ACC and those other two conferences especially. So summer 2023, there's the Florida State Board of Trustees publicly discusses the need to leave the ACC due to financial disadvantages. ACC's leadership was critical of, or Florida State's leadership was critical of ACC's grant of rights, calling it untenable. And so then in December of 2023, Florida State files a lawsuit, the first lawsuit against the ACC. Files that suit in Leon County, Florida, challenging the validity of the grant of rights, the legality of their exit fee, transparency of conference in their financial operations. And they asked the court to declare the grant of rights untenable, claim the ACC failed to provide actual legal documentation and media rights documentation that they wanted to see. And so that same day, December 2023, in 2023, the ACC files a countersuit. However, their countersuit's filed in North Carolina, in Mecklenburg County, where the conference is based, and they preemptively sue them, asking a judge to uphold their grant of rights, to enforce the exit fee, to prevent Florida State from leaving without penalty. So then you fast forward to March of 24, Clemson then files a lawsuit. Clemson sues the ACC in South Carolina. They kind of make similar claims about the grant of rights, about the exit fee, about the ACC kind of restricting their financial independence. And then April of that year, ACC countersues Clemson. So now they both have a suit. ACC files a suit against Clemson in North Carolina again, basically saying the same thing as the Florida State lawsuit. So now we fast forward to this year. We heard something last month basically that these settlements were almost done, but today we get a report from the Carolina Journal saying that the settlements have not yet been finalized despite these reports of progress kind of. And the North Carolina Supreme Court scheduled to hear oral arguments this month. However, they postponed those proceedings. They signaled that all parties may be actively negotiating settlements kind of behind the scenes. So really, I want to take a deep dive into kind of why they're doing this, what's going on here. The big thing is the grant of rights agreement. So the ACC has a grant of rights agreement that basically gives the conference entire control over a school's media rights, so TV revenue, all of that. The ACC controls all of it. It goes through 2036 here is the big number. So they basically have another 10 years of this. This has been a deal for a long time, but this ACC deal was signed 10 years ago. So this dispute, basically Florida State and Clemson, they're kind of saying that the grant of rights, it unfairly locks them into the ACC. Even if they want to leave for another conference, they can't because of the grant of rights, because the ACC controls their TV revenue, controls all of their media rights, so they can't really do anything. And the kind of legal question right here is a school keeping its media revenue if it leaves the ACC? Would Florida State keep that money? Or does the conference still kind of own those rights? Another thing here is the exit fee. So Florida State and Clemson if they were to leave the ACC right now, the ACC kind of has really, really strong financial penalties that prevent a school from leaving. The number's kind of disputed. It's definitely probably over 100 million. I've seen figures being as high as 500 million, 700 million. It's really not sure kind of what the actual exit fee would be, but regardless, it's clear that it would be a really big hamper on a school financially. They wouldn't be able to do a lot. They could not get out of this exit fee. It'd be really tough for them. So they both filed lawsuits, obviously, against this exit fee to try to prevent the ACC enforcing that. They claim that those fees are punitive, they're excessive, and they want the courts to either eliminate them or significantly reduce the amount of that penalty. So it does look like that's probably going to be one of the things here that will change for sure. This exit fee probably is, I doubt it gets dropped at all, but it's probably going to be dropped significantly, or it will be on a declining type of agreement of contract where, if they leave in 2025, it's still 100 million. 2026 might drop to 80 million. 2020, and thereon and thereforth, probably up to around 2030, 2031. That's a big date for college football in particular. That's a big year. That's when a lot of TV media deals kind of expire, and there could be another big round of realignment after that. So Florida State a big thing here is Florida State argued that the ACC has failed to provide full transparency on its finances, on its media deals. They've claimed that the conference has poorly managed revenue operations, and it could be damaging to their athletic department long term. I think that's something that does make a lot of sense, and Florida State probably is right about that. They need the ACC to provide full transparency for these deals if they want to succeed as an athletic department, to kind of regain control over what's happening in their programs, in their athletic department. This is something that the ACC probably should be sharing with the Florida State, but I could also see ACC kind of trying to keep that under wraps as a way to keep control over these two programs. The other thing is kind of interesting is the jurisdictional conflict right now. So obviously the ACC filed their suits in North Carolina. Florida State filed theirs in Florida. Clemson filed theirs in South Carolina. So you have 4 different lawsuits in 3 states. And how that's all going to work out is going to be really interesting. I'm not sure who actually has the legal jurisdiction, if it's technically in North Carolina because that's where the conference is, if it's where the schools are. That's an interesting one. I don't really know how that is going to work. North Carolina Supreme Court is now involved, so it's up to the highest court in North Carolina for those 2 lawsuits. But it's kind of interesting as to how it's all going to play out because there's no one jurisdiction. It's across multiple states. It's not just one lawsuit. I think that's kind of fun from a legal perspective, is who actually does have the jurisdiction here, because you have 3 different states all involved in this legal process. I think the big picture here right now is that these cases are basically their proxy for realignment, and whether the schools can leave the ACC without basically being ruined financially. Florida State, Clemson, they've obviously flirted with both the Big Ten and the SEC. They're probably better fits for the SEC overall, but both of those schools, have flirted with that. That's going to be a thing to look at here, is actually, will they change conferences? Is this the beginning of the end for the ACC? I think it might be. I think that certainly Florida State and Clemson have been trying to get out. They see those TV deals in the SEC, in the Big Ten, and go, hey, that looks really good to us. We're not getting enough money here in the ACC. We want more exposure. We want to build our programs back up. We want to join one of the big dogs right now, and that's the SEC, that's the Big Ten. Those are going to be your two conferences that are going to drive pretty much every single decision that's going to be made in college athletics for the next probably decade or so. I think 2030, again, that's a big year I'm looking at where there could be a really big shakeup in conference realignment in the structure of college football overall. The buyouts that I've seen, the numbers that I have been kind of speculated upon for the ACC, it looks like 2030 is going to be the year when it really kind of drops to a feasible number for Florida State and Clemson to get out of the ACC. So at that point, do they leave the ACC? Do they try to go to the SEC Big Ten? Or is there even a complete restructuring of college football and almost a super league of sorts? That's something that's still very possible right now, and that's something that's going to be looked at more and more as we inch closer to that 2030 deadline. So now we're going to take our third break of the show. When we come back, we're going to go up north. We're going to talk a little bit about Ohio State, but stick around. Make sure you stay with us on the GSMC College Football Podcast.